Why are women so right to be angry about the way the economy works? Spoiler alert, it's got a lot to do with the fact that we don't pay them nearly enough. I'm Richard Dennis, and I'm here to help take the con out of economics, to separate fact from fiction and to sort through all the nonsense about economics so that you don't have to. The anger on display at the recent rallies out the front of Parliament House, and indeed at rallies around the country, is perfectly understandable. The epidemic of physical violence, sexual violence and psychological violence in Australia is appalling, and women are understandably angry about the fact that powerful men have done so little for so long to not just change the laws, but to enforce the laws that we have, and indeed to punish those men guilty of these heinous crimes. But the anger that women face and the disadvantage they face is not just confined to physical and sexual violence. Our whole economic system makes it harder for women, whether it's in the home or in the workplace, to not just look after themselves, to not just care for other people, but terribly, our whole economic system makes it harder for women to flee the violent situations that so many people were expressing their anger about last week. One of the most common questions people ask is, why don't women leave violent situations? And there's a simple answer in Australia. They often simply can't afford to do so. We don't fund domestic violence crisis centres anywhere near adequately enough. We don't help people, unemployed people, disabled people, people with illnesses of any sort. We don't help them enough when they fall on hard times. And guess what? Women fleeing domestic violence, women suffering from the stress of sexual violence are far more likely to need the kind of services that for decades in Australia we've put inadequate resources into. Our economic system as a whole has not delivered for women. The economic growth that we've experienced in decades has disproportionately gone to blokes like myself when we have clear and obvious problems in the way that income is distributed, in the way that services are distributed, that if we wanted to, we could fix in a heartbeat. The first thing to talk about is the fact that women with the same credentials as men, working in the same occupations as men, typically earn less than men. This is not a new phenomena. We've observed this for decades, and for decades we haven't fixed the problem. So women leaving university, for example, young graduates 3 months after they finish university are likely to earn thousands of dollars less than a male graduate with the same degree working in the same industry. We've known this for years and we're not fixing it. As time progresses, the gap between men's and women's income rises. And then one of the worst things that happen to women in terms of the way that they interact with the workforce is they might actually do something like have a kid. We know that women have children. It's not a new phenomena. And around the world, other countries have far more generous parental leave and childcare provision of services. But here in Australia, we have quite stingy paid parental leave and we have very expensive childcare. So step one, we don't pay women enough. Step two, we've got pretty stingy paid parental leave. Step three, we've got very expensive childcare. All of these things stack up. But guess what? It gets worse than that. The retirement income system, our superannuation system, takes the inequalities that exist during the working life and make them even worse in retirement. In Australia, we have a system of superannuation where individuals are compelled to put 9.5% of their income into superannuation. If a man earns twice as much as a woman, the man's going to put twice as much into superannuation. Whether you think that's fair or not doesn't matter, because where superannuation really provides benefits to Australians is we have very generous tax concessions. The taxpayer puts a lot of money into your super as well. But guess what? The amount of money the taxpayer puts into superannuation is proportionate to how much you put in. So when a bloke earning $120,000 a year puts twice as much of his income into super as a woman earning 60, The taxpayer gives a lot more money to help the bloke prepare for his retirement than it gives to the woman. But we're not finished yet. Step 4, got the government now proposing to help women by letting them take money out of their super when they're fleeing domestic violence, rather than actually offer good support to women who are fleeing violence, whether it's direct financial support or provision of essential services in domestic violence crisis centres. Rather than actually help women, we're going to let them help themselves by taking what little money they do have in superannuation out and spending it to help them flee a violent situation. If, and it's a big if we wanted to fix these problems, we know how to fix them and we can afford to fix them. We're one of the richest countries in the world, and despite the economic crisis associated with COVID, the government's in the middle of the biggest spending binge in our history. The government spent more than $200 billion last year on things it wasn't planning to spend money on. There's no reason that that money couldn't have gone to supporting domestic violence crisis centres. There's no reason that that money couldn't have been used to boost unemployment benefits, to boost disability benefits, to boost the incomes of anyone who finds themselves having to leave a dangerous situation. There's absolutely nothing stopping the powerful men who make decisions in this country from making the decision to help women in those circumstances. But instead, they've spent $500 million to extend our war memorial. We are one of the richest countries in the world. When you hear someone say they can't afford to do something in Australia, when you hear a politician say we can't afford it, what that means is they don't want to. We can afford to do anything we want, but we can't afford to do everything we want. We found plenty of money for tax cuts for people like me. We found plenty of money for expensive new war memorials. When we can't find the money to help women fleeing violence, it's not because it's not there, it's because we haven't looked. Thanks for watching The Everyday Economist. Subscribe to our YouTube channel to get more episodes, and watch the next episode here.